All right, another question, or comment rather. This person says, I don't understand why the seniors, the older folks, don't know that starchy food turns into sweets or into sugar in the body. I'm in my 80s, and I was taught this in school. I thought this was fascinating. This individual is saying, hey, I've known that since I was in school. And if you're 80 years plus now, it's been quite a long time since you were in school. This person says, my teacher gave everybody a small piece of bread and had us to hold the bread in our mouth without swallowing. And in a few seconds, the bread turned sweet. After that demonstration, she explained that all starch turns to sugar in the body. Now, if this person is in their 80s and they learned this in school, I mean, that had to be, 70 years ago or more? So we're down into the 1940s perhaps, or early 50s, and they were being taught in school that all starch turns to sugar, and that teacher was right. So this person says, I never forgot that lesson. Well, the reality is starch does indeed turn into sugar, and that's the thing that trips up so many people. That's why so many diabetics, they're not seeing any progress. The doc is saying, well, switch out that white rice to brown rice and switch out that white bread to whole wheat bread. And they're doing it. They're being good, obedient boys and girls. And yet their meter is telling them their fasting blood sugar is about as bad as ever. Their A1C tests every three months or so are about as bad as ever. Or they're making very slight, slow progress. And the reality is this simple truth, this dirty little secret that nobody seems to want to talk about and a lot of people don't seem to even know, and that is that starch turns to sugar. So if I have a candy bar in one hand and in the other hand I have a baked potato, guess what? Not much difference in terms of blood sugar spike. Yeah, you can say the potato may have more nutrients in it, maybe more natural, and so forth and so on. But if you're a diabetic and your big concern is, which it should be, keeping your glucose levels under control, then that candy bar and that baked potato, there's not much difference. Well, there is a little difference. The potato will most likely do more damage to your blood sugar than the candy bar will. So the idea that just because something comes out of the ground, it gets a free pass is ridiculous. Your blood sugar will tell you it doesn't. And if you're wondering why it is that my A1C doesn't improve, it's because you haven't learned this lesson. You just assumed, like so many do, that if I give up candy and I give up cake and I give up ice cream and I give up pies and sugary desserts and cinnamon rolls and donuts, if I give up all that stuff, I'm doing so well that I'll be rewarded with a tremendous improvement in my A1C. So they do that. They give up the candy and the sugar and all that, and then they stuff themselves with chips and with not donuts, but with chips and with rice and with bread and pasta and breakfast cereal, and they're proud of themselves because these things are not nearly so sweet tasting as that apple pie with ice cream on top. So they've given up the stuff that really tastes sweet. But the reality is those starches are going to get into their stomach and bam, I mean within minutes they're going to turn into sugar. And you just test yourself. Eat a baked potato. I dare you. I challenge you. Eat a baked potato. If you're not convinced of this, now many of you that watch my channel are, but if you're not convinced, eat a baked potato and test yourself at 30 minutes, at 45, at 1 hour, at an hour and 15. Do kind of a scientific experiment with your own body and your baked potato. And then after that, eat a salad with a bunch of low-carb vegetables and a low-carb dressing and see if there's a difference. That's what turned the light bulb on top of my head. That's what gave me that aha moment. When I began to compare one meal versus another and how they affected my blood sugar, and the only way you're going to know that is to do these post-meal tests. Normally, if you say, well, I can't afford strips to test it 30 minutes, 45, 1 hour, hour and 15, hour and a half, I can't afford that. Okay, then a good, safe place to start is about an hour. You may find, if you do a few more tests, that an hour and 15 minutes might be your peaking time, or it might even be an hour and a half. Some people it'll be 2. For me, it was usually about an hour. So that became my standard, and I didn't use a lot of tests. A lot of times I wouldn't even test before. I'd just be curious, where am I going to be an hour after I eat? So I eat a meal, I set a timer. The minute I have my last bite, bam, I set the start button on the timer. 1 hour, the timer goes off, test my blood sugar, and I compare that with other meals. And if it starts to go to 140 or so, it's like, no, I can't ever eat that again. Not in that form. I may have to adapt. I may have to modify. I have to take a little less of this and more of that. And some things are just so ridiculously high, it's like, no, never again. Not today, not tomorrow, not next year, never again. And the good news is there's so many nice foods that you can eat that will not spike your blood sugar. You don't have to hold on. Some people act desperate. It's like, how can I hold on to a baked potato? Well, maybe if I bake the potato and then stick it in the fridge and then pull it out, and maybe that'll improve. And I'm like, why? Why would you even do that? It's still going to raise your blood sugar. Maybe not as much. It still will. And why just not give it up? You know, there's a time when you just have to give things up. And it's kind of like a woman with a cheating husband that's fooling around with other women constantly. And sometimes the man finally leaves them, and they're praying for their husband to come back. My thought would be, why? Why would you pray for that kind of an well, I could call him a name, but I won't. But that kind of a guy to come back to you when all he's done is fool around and cheat on you most of your married life. So why would you try to pray a cheating husband back into your life? And why would you try to bring a baked potato into your life any which way you can? You know, whether some say, well, freeze it, or some say, well, let it cool, or do this or do that with it, or boil it a different way. And people come up with all kinds of creative ways to maybe lower it a little bit. And my thought is, why? Why bother? There's so many other good foods. Why try to hang on to that potato? Anyway, there's my rant for the day. Benedict and I would like to invite you to study the Bible with us through our podcast. Join us in our home as we do our morning Bible studies. With a podcast, there's nothing to see. You just listen. And that means you can enjoy our Bible study while you drive in your car, go for a walk, or work out at the gym. Our podcast is called Discover the Word with Den and Ben, and you can find it in most platforms where you get your podcasts. And if you know nothing at all about podcasts and how they work, there's a link in the description that will help get you started.